Hey YouTube, how's it going? It's me again after almost half a year without doing a book review. This time I'm here to review a fairly obscure novel, Mesa Selimovic's Death and the Dervish. This was recommended to me by uh, an independent bookstore owner who I frequent a lot. He has very good taste in books. He recommended to me some really good books, and he's one of the few places that has obscure, difficult to get titles in my country. Um, and this is possibly maybe his best recommendation, if not one of his best recommendations. And I'm really glad that I bought the book and took my time to read it. It was one of the best reading experience I've had in a while. And it's possibly the first or second book I've read at the beginning of 2020, and already I feel like it's going to be difficult to top this. So yeah, it's that good. But don't let me ruin it for you. If you want to know if it's that good, you got to read it for yourself and say for yourself whether you like it or not. Uh, so where to start? Well, Mesa Selimovic is not really that well known in the English-speaking world, from what I know, because only two of his books are translated: the Death and the Dervish and The Fortress. He's written about 8 novels, other collections of poetry and short stories, but not much has been translated other than those 2 novels that I know of. I actually want to talk a bit about Selimovic and his background before starting, because this novel is influenced by one major event in his life and his experience living under communist Yugoslavia. Meza Selimovic was a Serbian writer who was born in like early 20th century, 1910, died around 1980 something, and he lived under communist Yugoslavia, which was oppressive and difficult to it's difficult to live without being caught into trouble in one way or another. So he was born in 1910 in this I don't know if it's a village or city called Tuzla in Bosnia-Herzegovina. He studied Serbo-Croatian language at the University of Belgrade, graduated in 34, and returned to teach there after 2 years in his gymnasium, which I think is a high school or some kind of school, which in this gymnasium is now named after him. He spent the first years of World War II in Tuzla until he was arrested for participating in partisan anti-fascist resistance in 1943. The Partisan is a party in Yugoslavia that had the strongest anti-Nazi, anti-fascist resistance. I also assume they also had very strong anti-Italian fascist resistance. I'm not really well versed in World War II history in detail, but just thought it'd be interesting to bring up that yeah, Yugoslavian party, the Partisan party, is one of the best resistance against the fascists in World War II. Selimovic moved to liberated territory after his release and joined the Communist Party of Yugoslavia. His brother was also a communist, but he was arrested and then later executed without a trial for an alleged theft. This deeply shook Selimovic and was maybe the biggest influence in his life. It was the major influence that led him to write this book, because the main character's book is trying to release his brother from jail, but finds himself kind of stuck in the bureaucracy of the I don't know, the bureaucratic system in the Ottoman Empire, and ultimately fails to do so. Um, I just want to mention one small thing that's uncommon about Selimovic as a writer, that he started writing fairly late in his life. I'm usually, I mean, most writers that I read start writing since they were kids, or they're either prodigies or the people that try to publish in their 20s and not publishing something by their 20s or teens. But Selimovic, he published his first short story when he was 38, and Death and the Dervish was published when he was 56, which I kind of find refreshing. Not because There's anything wrong with publishing something, writing, being ambitious that young, but it shows that you don't have to start that early on to be a great original writer. It just shows that you taking your time and letting ideas and life experience and I don't know, different passions marinate, and you could actually be more fruitful in your writing. I mean, if you just start writing, all you want to do is maybe impress people with your style and your prose and show people how good you are as a writer. Well, my impression of reading Selimovic is that he wasn't trying to impress me at all. He was just trying to express something that was probably bothering him personally. And in the process, I felt he was more sincere than some of my favorite writers too. Not to say that really great writers that are good stylists that have been writing from a young age are not sincere. It's just that there's something about being obsessed about being such a perfect, good writer, as like a job or as something to aspire to. You lose track of what's important in being a writer, which is like expressing basic universal human truths and being very open and sincere about one's struggle as a person in the world or in society or in human condition. Um, don't want to get too much into this. I'll talk about the themes of the book later. So on with the plot. The book is divided into two parts. The first part has a more linear, structured narrative. The second part is more non-linear and goes all over the place. But it's still as good as the first, if not better. But I enjoyed the second part a lot more. The book in general is about the trials of the main character. He is a dervish. A dervish is like a certain sect of Islam. We're not a sect, but they're like these. Sufi sheikhs who worship in a very ascetic way. They're like hermits. I guess you could think of them as like these, Buddhist monks that live in the mountains and just, a very hermetic life, or these like Orthodox monks in Greece that, also live in the mountains and like grow their own vegetables and everything. Except dervishes are known for this thing they do where they dance in praise of God in a certain way. I don't know much about it, but I heard that it's just a very unique way of worshiping God, and I'm not really sure. I think it originated from present-day Turkey, but like in Ottoman times. I'm not really sure, but yeah. Anyway, the book is written from his perspective, Ahmed Nuruddin, and from the opening lines, you get the impression it's a kind of confession or some kind of settling of accounts. You get the impression that he feels guilty about something and he wants to share it with the reader. And just from the opening pages, which I just want to read right now, it's really beautiful and poetic. I begin my story for nothing, without benefit for myself or anyone else, from a need stronger than benefit or reason. I must leave a record of myself, the chronicled anguish of my inner conversations, the vague hope that a solution will be found when all accounts have been settled, if they may ever be. When I have left my trail of ink on this paper, which lies in front of me like a challenge. I do not yet know what will be written here, but in the strokes of these letters, at least some of what was in me will remain, no longer to perish in eddies of mist, as if it had never been, or as if I had never known what happened. In this way, I will come to see how I became what I am. This self that is a mystery even to me, and yet it is a mystery to me that I have not always been what I am now. I know these lines are muddled. My hand trembles at the task of disentanglement that I face. The trial I now commence. Here I am everything, judge, witness, and accused. I'll be as honest as I can be, as honest as anyone ever could be. For I have begun to doubt that sincerity and honesty are one and the same. Sincerity is the certitude that we speak the truth, and who can be certain of that? But there are many kinds of honesty, and they do not always agree with one another. I went a bit too long. I think I'll end up reading this whole book, this video, if I kept going. It's just that good. In the first part of the book, basically what's deriving action is Sheikh Nuruddin trying to free his brother from jail, who's been jailed because he's been caught discovering a document he was not supposed to discover that throws a certain politically connected person into bad light, and it's not clear if the brother really ratted him out or like he was taken to prison or the fortress so they could be silenced anyway out of precaution. So Nuruddin tries to save him by using, going out of his way, talking to his social connections, asking him for these, favors, but ends up not being successful anyway. He gets hampered by, every step he takes. This is a person who, you know, um, deliberately withdrawn himself from society because he feels like he cannot handle the pressures of, putting up an appearance, of having to, you know, uh, kind of play this social game of back and forth of like doing favors for other people for expecting something in return. This is someone who just thinks the only way he could live is to just withdraw from society and worship God and do all the activities that come, all the activities and responsibilities that come with being a dervish in his community. I don't want to give away what happens to his brother, but I don't think it's that important. A spoiler: he does die. I mean, if I already told you that like in real life, someone's brother died, so I think you can figure it out for yourself. But I'm only willing to spoil it because I don't think it hurts the story in any way. This is not a book whose strength is plot, although there are other twists that will like catch your eye. But I just think it doesn't make that much of a difference. In the first part of the book, Nuruddin comes off as someone who, in addition to being withdrawn, like he's very indecisive about his actions. He doesn't act on any decision. He finds like a trespasser, someone who's like a fugitive, like running away from guards, hiding in his kasbah. It's like no, hiding in the teke, which is like the dervish, just a place where the dervishes, like a monastery for the dervishes. And he's not very decisive about what he wants to do. He doesn't turn him in, but he doesn't turn him in, but he doesn't really help him by hiding him somewhere. He just lets him be and doesn't want to be involved with the consequences. And this is a recurrent theme of not wanting to take responsibility or getting involved in other people's affairs, but also not taking any kind of, I don't know, risk in helping others or doing what is the right thing. It could be the case a fugitive is guilty and he should be doing the right thing by handing him in. And it could be the case that he's innocent and he should hide him, but he doesn't make a decision because he assumes that it could be either way. So it's better if he doesn't do anything. In the process, he's not being an agent. He's just being a passive observer and is letting this guy struggle to free himself, who might be a bad person. So this is a running theme in the book that I'll get to later. There's one character that I really like in this book who is talked about fairly often, who's a very close friend of Nuruddin's. Name's Hassan, who is like the brother-in-law of the judge that sent Nuruddin's brother into jail, who was a very interesting character, Hassan. He comes from this very wealthy family, gets sent to Constantinople, present-day Istanbul, to become like to try to learn something in the universities or something so he can climb the social ladder. He ends up, living a very nomadic bohemian life and settles for being a cattle trader to just explore, Europe and Asia and everything. And he's not a dumb guy. He's a very intelligent guy, but he just doesn't like restrain himself to the confines of being a cog in a society, even though he might have more wealth and power than other people. He's just a very, I'd say, maybe spiritual, intellectual, free spirit person who has a very good sense of humor, who's also very wise. He's not an idiot either, even though he acts like a fool and like a lazy bohemian. I think he's a character I relate to the most. but I guess you could say he's not without his flaws, but yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the first part. The second part, like I said earlier, is non-linear, and you get more backstory about Nuruddin's background. He used to be a soldier fighting for the Ottoman Empire against the enemies, which I assume is like different parts of Europe. They're trying to get back territories from the Ottoman Empire, but it's not really clear. Like the whole novel takes place in this unnamed kasbah, unnamed province in the Ottoman Empire, in a not specified time, but there are hints that it's 17th century Ottoman Empire in Bosnia Herzegovina. and it gives the novel an air of timelessness, makes it feel like it's not part of history. It's like eternal and ethereal and forever. You know, a story that's told from like the Quran or the Bible, but it is a very good device. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I think it's mostly because he wants to indirectly parallel the oppressive, rule Ottomans had on the Serbs and Croats and all the southeastern Europeans at the time, to the oppressive rule communist Yugoslavia had on their own people. Maybe that was it, but I'm not really sure. Um, so you get backstory, like seeing Nordin as like the soldier was actually very brave and noble, and came back from war haunted by seeing what happened to his friends and like even his enemies, and there are a lot of subplots that actually feed into the main story in a very original way. Like, even though I don't like nonlinear narratives that much, it's just the way it nested into the main story and fed to the main narrative is just highly original, and I just don't know how Melissa Selimovic was able to tie it all together. Of course, a lot of it felt like digressions, but it really paid off because, like, as a reader, you don't really feel engaged with the story unless there is like a chronological sequence of events. But in this case, I was just interested in every little paragraph was trying to tell me. I just can't give this book enough praise, but I'll tone it down for now. The book's shit, all right? Also get a bit more about Hassan's background, why he rejected his father, his family's wealth and his social status, and why he became the person he is. And you get to see the consequences of part one and part two, what happens to Sheikh Nuruddin. Eventually goes to prison for giving a speech back in part one. He gives a speech to like condemn the people who sent his brother to jail and kill him without a trial, and he gets to experience the psychological torture of being in like the fortress, which is like the name of the prison in the story, and he comes out a changed man. Definitely like traumatized, but he also ends up becoming more assertive in a certain sense. He takes less shit from people, and he knows how to, like, he starts playing that game of knowing how to be cunning and deceitful to get things from people, not because he wants things, but because he doesn't want to get hurt from other people, and because he can get information from them that would later, benefit him or keep him from becoming, get him from trouble. He realized that he can't live in society being, innocent and naive and, not and withdrawn from society, because eventually gets pulled in by different people, and that he needs to defend himself. And by becoming, by playing this game of being, conniving and deceitful, he eventually finds out the person who ratted his brother out, and ends up having the guy being indebted to him. This works to his benefit, and he ends up using this guy to eventually find out something that later gets him in a higher social position. He ends up becoming the judge towards close to the end of the novel. He ends up becoming a caddy, which is a very high position in the community, and kind of slowly ends up becoming the kind of monster he was fighting in part one. And it's strange, I still sympathize with the character. I don't feel like he's done anything wrong, although in that respect, one gets the impression he does get corrupted, but in a very understandable way. I think after seeing everything he's been through, like, it's hard for a reader not to sympathize with him and not to agree with his decisions after being such a doormat for for everyone else in part one. I guess it's a very good book to read about trying to be a good person while not letting others take advantage of you, while also not turning into the kind of person that takes advantage of other people. It's a very good book that I find to be like up there with maybe Dostoevsky's best novels, and the book's also been compared a lot to Kafka's The Trial because of the very surreal nature of the book, the very, like how did he go from point A to B with like this very ethereal, in between point that I don't know how it happened. Yeah. So, I want to talk about some of the main themes before I wrap things up. There's a main theme in this book that one of the main themes of the book is this. I won't say Serbian word called malodusnost. Pretty sure I butchered it, which translates to something like reduced or diminished soul, and more closely like faint-heartedness or cowardice, or moral turpitude or cowardice or indifference, um, which I feel like was mostly in part one, where Sheikh Nuruddin was too afraid to take any decisions he was afraid to take any responsibility that would either improve the situation, help other people out, or just uh, be an active or any engaging member of society. Anytime he had to make a decision about for someone or something, whether for himself or other people, it's just that he would withdraw and become too uncertain about taking any decision. So end up in a worse place than when you started. There are other themes that are like we go on about, but I think my favorite, I think the most obvious theme is like the relationship between individual and different systems of power. I mean, the book was written at in the time of communist Yugoslavia, where if you were an intellectual and artist, your work and your activities would be closely analyzed by the state, the bureaucratic system. You'd be censored, and you'd be censoring yourself to be able to get along in society, not to get arrested. It reminds me a lot of Mikhail Bulgakov's Master Margarita. It was written in such a great way where like like Stalin wasn't ever mentioned, but it was it was satirical in such a way where you could tell it was poking fun at the Soviet Russia without really uh, drawing too much attention to the criticism against Stalin and Soviet Russia. I mean, going so far as to like I don't know, bring Satan, in present day Russia in Bulgakov's time, like that's a genius of good literature. Um, there's a lot of great passages in the book about mortality, growing old, relationship with your friends and family. Felt like the friendship between Hassan and Nuruddin was actually really beautiful. It's like I would say it's almost as close as between Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer, or I don't know, Ismail and what was that guy in Moby Dick? Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't want to overthink and overanalyze this book, but it's just a good read. And if you want to read it, read it. If you don't. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon if you order it. And if you're in a country that doesn't really have Amazon, deliver you can deliver it to. You can probably go to your independent bookstore and ask them if they have it or order it. So like, comment, subscribe, and but more importantly, read. Thanks for waiting, guys. Try to come back with another book review very soon.